played live after their final tour last year, but fear not, the iconic music is returning to the stage.
So the founding member, Mike Rutherford.
It's just gone 10 to 8. You might have thought you'd heard the last of Genesis being played live after their final tour last year, but fear not, the iconic music is returning to the stage.
So the founding member, Mike Rutherford, is hitting the road again this year with his band Mike and the Mechanics, and he's promising to include some Genesis classics. Let's have a listen back at some of his memorable hits.
Mike joins us now, and not quite fresh back from your last tour, but it's not even been a year and you're heading back out again.
I know. I mean, the Genesis tour finished last, the final show finished last April, and the Mechanics kick off this April.
Fantastic.
Well, some people don't like to go on tour, do they, in your business? And they get to a certain point, they think, I've done enough times. What's the thing about going back on tour?
Certain point or certain age. It's great for the Just, and the Mechanics are fun guys to do. They've all got other jobs, do other things, so we sort of assemble when the time is right. They're fun to play with on stage. And I love playing the English theatres. You know, the kind of Albert Hall size, the old-fashioned theatres. It's great.
And that buzz of seeing a crowd in front of you still works, obviously. Is that the driver?
Yeah, people say it's a hard job, but it's not. People are out there to see you. They share the music. It's fantastic.
And you're incorporating Genesis into the tour, but also unplugged as well. What's behind that decision?
Well, I think that people enjoy the slightly acoustic bit in the set. You know, it's a sort of 2.25 hour set. And we did it last time with the Mechanics. And they like hearing songs in a different setting. In fact, I had to try and persuade Phil and Tony to do it on the last tour because they weren't keen on doing it. But it worked really well, actually.
Particularly in theatre environments as well, I would imagine the unplugged sort.
Yeah, and also it's a bit different too, hearing songs in a different setting.
You have officially waved goodbye to Genesis in a performance environment, haven't you? That is done and dusted.
Yeah, people say, how do you feel? And I go, it's been 53 years. You know, things do stop, it's okay. But it was quite special to know it was our last few shows, you know, our last tour, playing these places for the last time, you know. And on the last night, I looked down and my song list had just 4 lines left, you know what I mean? And I suddenly thought, wow, that's the end of a wonderful time with Phil and Tony.
5 decades.
People always wonder, really, is it over? I mean, there's not a recording situation. There's nothing else in there.
It really is over.
Okay.
Unlike Elton, who we love. He did his first last tour about 35 years ago.
Well, the last one is apparently coming up, isn't it?
This really is, yeah.
It really is. Phil Collins, of course, people were aware of his health conditions, which made it very difficult for him practically, didn't it, to perform with you. What do you know about him now?
Yeah,
there's a link, isn't there, between you now and him, because his son is going to be playing with you.
It's wonderful. His son, who played, Nic Collins, played on the last tour with us. He's joining us. Our regular drummer, Gary, can't make this one, so Nick's going to step in. And he's a fantastic drummer. And as you know, Phil is he's much more immobile than he used to be, which is a shame. But the tour was in good spirits, and he's fine now at home, you know, enjoying life. He's worked so hard over the years, you know. I think he's enjoying his sort of a time at home.
It must be lovely for him to see Nick going on tour, though.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't imagine that
on
pride.
stage on the last tour, it was really nice to have the two of them sort of side by side.
And is it an unrealistic question to ask? How do they compare as drummers? Do people is in the music industry? Do people ever do that?
I always support the dads because I'm that generation. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Phil's an amazing drummer, but Nick is fantastic too. Like his dad, but a bit different. So I'm looking forward to having him join us.
And is it? I mean, it sounds like a silly question, but the bringing someone younger into the mix, dare I say it, that's presumably that must be fun as well.
It is.
Just get something completely different.
Yeah, it's a new energy. It's a new face. He's younger, plays it differently. He'll arrive on day one rehearsed. He'll know all the songs much better than all of us. He's so professional and keen, and he's got a great energy. So I look forward to it. But you're right, it's a new face, a bit of a young energy.
And young people now entering the musical industry, it's a completely different playing field, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's much harder now.
Yeah.
You know, we used to go on tour and travel the world and get a little following going. It's now so globally, you know, all social media, people know what you're doing all the time. You can't do a sort of slow apprentice start like we did. You've got to deliver straight away, which is, I think, is much tougher for them.
And the turnover is high, isn't there? And people aren't necessarily sitting listening to an entire album on repeat like we used to. It's one single and then someone else swoops in. It's really competitive in a different way.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing is, ours was a blank canvas. There weren't many bands in our day, so it was kind of easy, actually. Don't tell them that, but it was kind of easy. Now, Everyone's
And
in the
you were
band.
good.
Oh, thank you. But it was a much easier time in a sense.
If you had a Genesis moment in time that you have kind of front and centre of your mind as you look back, a particular gig, where would that have been? What time? Where would we have been?
I would go back to, because visually it's very strong. In 2007, the last show in Europe, we played the Circus Maximus of the Colosseum, the old chariot racing ring.
Wow.
500,000 people, a sunny day, and the Vatican in the background. And I remember that wonderful and very calm atmosphere, that wonderful event.
500,000 people. Oh my word.
But also the trouble is, most shows are indoors in a stadium and arena. So you go in, you drive underneath, and that's it. An outdoor setting sticks in your mind so much more.
That's amazing that you could just pull that memory immediately as soon as you asked the question. It was that one.
Yeah, because I wish we'd done more outdoor shows, like in settings, you know what I mean? But we didn't do it. So,
Well, maybe in your next decade of touring. So that's your last tour with Genesis has happened, and you say you mean it this time. What about Mike and the Mechanics, though? Can you see yourself going on tour again after this?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this tour. I mean, I never really looked too far ahead. I'm going to do this tour and have a lot of fun, enjoy seeing English fans and talking to them, and then just see what happens next. You know, I'm sort of, I don't really worry too much about the future. You kind of know when you get to the end of this stage, you know.
Well, that sounds like very good philosophy.
So far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worked all right.
Seems to have worked well, yeah.
Lovely to see you this morning. Good luck with the tour. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
So it's Mike and the Mechanics Refueled tour starting in April.
Do stay with us on Breakfast. Your headlines are coming up.